All right, welcome everybody to tonight's episode of CAG Chat. And we do apologize for the technical difficulties. We are definitely a lot of behind right now. And most of our crew is not with me tonight. Derek was on, but he jumped off. We'll hopefully have him back on. But I am joined by Levon tonight, who was also having technical difficulties as well. So you won't see her, but you will definitely hear her. Um, I am going to go ahead and give us where is it? All right. So, CAG Chat provides expert analysis and discussions based on facts and research. However, we are not attorneys, and nothing shared should be considered legal advice. For legal matters, please consult a qualified attorney. And again, I just want to say that tonight we're supposed to be having a conversation with um, Caroline, the internet sensation, and she was on with us, but once we had technical difficulties, she hopped off. So we'll have her back on. We're also joined by Nathaniel Foreman, who is a land use attorney here in the county, and he's going to be going over um, the developer side of the issues what we're facing here in the county. So we give a brief explanation of that. So hopefully, if you have any questions, you will drop those in the chat. But I'm going to go ahead and toss it over to Levon now because she's going to introduce a couple of hot topics right now that's floating around the DMV area. Levon?
Hey, thanks so much. I also want to say that all opinions expressed are the opinions of those who are on the show. We might
Mm-hmm.
need to add that to the legal statement, Sherman. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, y'all can't see me, but hello, I'm still beautiful. All right. I have two open mic topics tonight. One is regarding the announcement made this week, I think it was yesterday, by Governor Wes Moore. He visited Shepherd's Cove over in, I think that's like Seat Pleasant area / Landover. And he was joined by the director and the board and the county executive as he announced this new portal that is accessible by all devices. It is hosted by the Maryland Department of Human Services, and it is called the Maryland Benefits Consumer Portal. And on this app, you can access food, resources for food, cash, health, and energy assistance. They say that the form is shorter, easier to understand, and of course, as I said, works on any device. You can also track your benefits and update your information in one place. So they're streamlining your access to services. So, shout out to the governor and everyone still doing things to make sure people get supported. The second thing I want to mention on open mic is the re-election of Ward 8 DC Council member Trayon White yesterday. They held a special election. I saw a number tossed out, almost $1 million that it cost to have this race. There were about 5 candidates, and he won. He won. He beat out a lady named Sheila Bunn, who is an experienced council staff person. She used to work with Vincent Gray, and she lost by 5 points. Now, Mr. White was expelled from the council because he was in February because he was charged in a federal bribery case. And that case comes up for trial in January. And next year is election year, 2026, for the DC Council and the mayor. And I'm perturbed that he would be expelled and still allowed to run, and then he's facing a trial. So how much can he really pay attention to the business of DC? And my presumption is that he did not want to risk missing out in 2026 election should he be found not guilty, because more than likely the filing date would probably the judgment on his case may or may not be available by the time the filing date had passed. So it looked to me like he was just covering all his bases to be able to stay in his seat should the people vote for him again. And I believe in you're innocent until proven guilty, but it just really
We saw
looked
the video.
right. I was going to say the video looked and the audio sounded and folks are
This
talking,
is fake news.
and nobody's going to throw you under the bus just because. And so I just challenge people to understand, to question, why are people so lenient upon these public officials who are dishonest or doing things that are questionable? If it ain't illegal, it's surely unethical. And we got to stop elevating folk because they remind you of your son or your husband or your uncle or your nephew who didn't make it, who maybe went astray. And let's just, I see Mr. Foreman, so I'm going to be wrapping up. But let's remove the emotions from the work that we need to get done. And that's it. All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Levon, for the hot topics. And we are going to be joined today by a special person here in the county. This is one of the land use attorneys that is very active in Prince George's County. He has over 10 years of experience and is the he's the past president of Maryland Builders Industry Association for the Prince George's County chapter. And currently he is the member of their executive committee. I am talking about Nathaniel Foreman. Thank you so much, Nate, for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Sherman. I really appreciate being here. And honestly, I was really enjoying what Miss Thomas had to say. So I had no problem taking a back seat.
Oh, I understand.
Thank you, Mr. Foreman.
Well,
But
I
our
definitely
producer does not like to waste time.
I have wasted the people's time enough for today, so I definitely want to hop into it because a lot of people are, as he affectionately calls himself, the schmuck who's destroying our community. He was anxious to join us as well, so I definitely want to get into this conversation because there are a lot of truths and there are a lot of myths to um, the what's going on here with developing our county, and we're hoping to dispel some of those things. Nick, can you give us a brief intro to yourself and how do you fit into this grand scheme of thing of building within our county?
Yeah, I'd be more than happy to. And yeah, I know the work that I do. I know that I work for developers, and I may not always be someone popular. So as Sherman did say, the schmuck that destroys communities. And because I think sometimes you have to look at it and, I know the perception. I think that I'm actually doing and helping the citizens with housing and trying to get affordable housing and amenities. But, there's two sides to every story. So either I'm helping you out or I'm the schmuck that destroys your neighborhood, and I'll go either way. So I don't want to necessarily start too basic, but I do think it's important to really understand what would normally be called let's say a zoning attorney. But I do prefer the term land use, and I'll say why, because zoning is one facet of development. That is just about what can and cannot be used or developed on a property. But that's just one step in the entire process of taking, let's say, vacant or underdeveloped land and making it productive or turning it into tax revenue, homes, businesses, or anything else. So that's why I like the more of the form of the encompassing land use, because it really does encompass more than just what the use is. And I think that's important, and I'll explain why. Any rural development has about three phases, and that's sort of your zoning, which is the use, as I said. But then you also have what's called your adequate public facilities testing, And the final stage is more about design, landscaping, more aesthetics, and how a project looks and operates. And those are all three very important functions for land development. Um, so the way a project would really work is that, let's say you have the zoning that allows the property to be used how you want to. Well, you still have to go through the preliminary plan of subdivision process. And that's really where the use is allowed, right? That you're gonna, let's say that you have something that's zoned for townhouses. So you
Oh
can do
Lord,
that.
townhouses.
Starting with what everybody knows about, right?
Right.
So regardless of whether that use is wanted or not, that use is zoned that way, but that doesn't mean I can just go get a permit and start building.
Mhm.
I have that My proposal has to be tested for the public facilities in the area, schools, traffic, water and sewer. Um, what's unique and rare with Prince George's County is that fire and police are also included in that, which I think makes it almost unique in the whole country.
Well, I believe there's
Uh,
a bill that's trying to remove that. Am I correct?
there is a bill that is from the development side, we want to remove it because initially, when the county went through the zoning rewrite process,
Hmm.
that was actually one of the first proposals the consultant said. They said, we look at best practices, and best practices don't include this test.
Hmm.
Um, and as actually a more functional level, the one of the reasons this has become so critical to development is the test isn't really been applied correctly or under the let's say I don't want to say proper, but what's the word I'm looking for to be safe? The more like a consistent process, right?
Hmm.
That it has to do with timing and response. But there's seven different districts, police districts. Getting a emergency call in, Brandywine is going to be different than if you get an emergency call in College Park, University Park, Forest Heights, Capitol Heights, Forest Hills. It's just going to be
Hmm.
different that way. There's no real consistency as to when that timing begins or ends. Is it when the call is received by the radio recorder? I can't think of the word.
Dispatch.
You know, or is it when it's dispatched out to the police? So
Hmm.
there's just issues with that. But that's getting kind of really into the granular, and I'd be more happy to kind of talk about that for it. But the preliminary plan subdivision, adequate public facilities. So while the use may be allowed, and we can go from there, that
Hmm.
doesn't mean that the area can support those additional houses. And that's what that process is. There are agreed upon guidelines and metrics that Park and Planning uses to decide what the impact is going to be.
Hmm.
Now, you and I and everyone else on this meeting, on this call, anyone you talk to can disagree whether you like the tests that are implemented, but there has to be a test. There has to be some sort of metric. It can't be, well, my neighbor said he was stopped at that stoplight for too long, or, um, you know, I have a hard time getting out of my driveway. That may be true, but we can't objectively test whether what that actually means. So we have these tests. And so if your project is going to have too much of an impact on the neighborhood, you might either be denied the project or you would have to do mitigation. And one of the interesting parts is I don't know the exact numbers, but almost all new roads in Prince George's County have been built by developers because that's where a lot of that money comes from is the roadway improvements that are a response to this development.
Right.
And then the final step is the detailed site plan. That's really where we know the use is allowed and we can do that. We know that the impact from development will either be negligible or be mitigated or denied, but assuming it's not denied, then we go to, well, how is the site going to look? What's the layout like? What's the building going to look like? Are the homes going to be and all that? And that really is one of the all the interesting unique steps in Prince George's County, and that's the level of political involvement at that step in the process.
Mhm.
And that's one thing that really makes Prince George's County different than the rest of the state, let alone other areas, in that you have these objective standards of use is allowed or not allowed. You have public facilities. Do you impact the community? Do you not? Or do you need to mitigate it? But here it becomes very political and very subjective. And depending on the council member and the district and the neighborhood and the citizen associations, development that may otherwise meet every other test can be shot down, or sometimes development that maybe is not as beneficial can be pushed through despite being community opposition. Again, I'm not saying one way is good, one way is bad. I'm just saying how the situation can be perceived and how it can be reviewed neutrally. Um, so that's kind of really a broad idea about the overall process. I'm not sure if that answers the question you had asked, Sherman, but I kind of thought it was very important to talk about in generalities what happens from the very beginning to the end. And that's why I think land use is better than zoning, because zoning is only the first step. And a lot of the times that's almost the easiest step to decide. Either, if I have someone from out of state who comes in and says, I want to build this property here or build this item here, look at the zone and say, well, the zone says you can't do it.
And that's where I want to get to, because there is a perception that developers just build, you know, townhomes or homes just anywhere. Is that something that you all do, or is it the property owner? Is it the government? Who is actually saying, I want these particular homes, or I want, these townhomes? Where is that coming from?
So that's a great question. The very first idea is, where is the land available? Because sometimes you may not see any land that's able to be developed. No, there's no one willing to buy it, no one willing to sell it. But when you look at, let's say, assuming that you have a seller who, has his property on the market or her property on the market, and we would look to see what the zone is. Is it one of the new transit-oriented activity center zones, which is around your metro stations or along the Route 1 corridor, where there is this concept from the general plan to have more density and therefore kind of promote townhouses? Is it one of your residential multifamily zones or your residential single family zones? And you kind of look at that. So really, it's sort of the zone controls what can and cannot be done. There are some zoning procedures you can do to revise and modify your zone. But again, that goes through your entire approval process. And you're basically asking for special permission from the council. And this is where because the district council is sort of the final say when it comes to zoning and use, and they can approve these map
So
amendments or not.
if something conforms with the use of a particular area, can the council come in and say, well, we don't want that there, and we're just going to not approve it? Can they do that?
I have to be very careful here in how I
Okay.
respond. I'll be perfectly honest.
I'll kind of answer and then you can piggyback. So several terms ago, there was some legislation passed to stop council members acting as the district council from pulling projects that had already been put in the pipeline for approval, or they had been approved and then they put up stops to them. And so they established three guidelines that the district council has to follow in order to deny a project that has been submitted to them for approval by Maryland Park and Planning. I can never remember the three. I know that one project did not get approved because of the lack of a transportation study. The transportation study had not been done since 1979. So does that kind of help you a little bit to answer Sherman's question?
Yeah, it does. And to kind of put a little bit of a finer point on that, there is a lot of leeway in a sense of what the council can and cannot approve. In theory, or actually under the law, not even in theory, the council can only review the planning board's decision, approval or denial, and change it if the planning board's denial is going or decision is arbitrary, capricious, or illegal.
Mm-hmm.
But the real kind of concern is if the council is really adamant and doesn't like your project, the action they take to deny it may or may not be legally correct, but then it becomes on the onus of the developer, applicant, property owner to go to the court system to have that resolved, hopefully in the developer landowner's favor. And that's also very risky because a lot of deference is given to the district council's decision, and going to court is a much more expensive process. It takes a lot of time. And when a lot of the way these deals are structured, you may have already been working with banks, financiers, and the landowner, because if you don't own the property already, for 3, 4, 5 years. And if you're looking at another 2, 3, 4 years just to get through the court system, you may just cut your losses and run. So while the district council's decision denying a development may not be legally correct, it does enough to stop development by discouraging developers to keep pursuing that.
Thank you. And there was a question in the chat. It says, how early can residents get involved in the development of their community?
Regarding a specific project?
Yeah, if there's a project that's going to come out.
Okay, yeah. So in the development process, if you're it changes, let's say if you're just changing like what I'm doing right now is by changing, one fast food restaurant to a bank, that really doesn't rise to the level of notifying the community, especially because it's already an existing pad site in a mall area. So that's not something that would really come to the community. But for the development applications that do have a planning board hearing or a district council hearing, zoning hearing examiner, there is a mandatory pre-application neighborhood meeting. There is a requirement. It had always been part of best practices before the new zoning ordinance took effect in 2022, but now it is part of the law. The citizen associations, the neighbors have to get notice of this meeting, and there has to be a meeting. And I will say, by the time there is that meeting, it may seem like a lot of the decisions are foretold and this is just a formality. But I want to dispel that kind of connotation because we have to have the project in a posture that we can actually tell the community what we're looking at, if that makes sense. So I know a lot of these community members would, in a perfect world, want to be involved at the very beginning where, let's say, an out-of-town developer looks and sees that there's a property ready to be developed or that's for sale and they want to do something with it. But we have nothing to actually show the residents what we want to do because we don't know at that point. It will take time, energy, money to figure that out. And we don't want to go to the residents with just kind of this blank idea because that's not really helpful for anyone to decide or discuss what's actually happening there.
Right.
So long story short, the project has to be a little bit far enough along so that way we can actually discuss and talk about some of the important things, but it can't be too early where it's all just hypothetical. Because again, it's wasted. I don't say it's wasting everyone's time, but if we think that the project is going to, fit 800 townhomes, but we look really at it and it's only going to be about 200, there could already be this huge negative wave at the very beginning that discourages any sort of look at it.
Thank you.
Yeah. So so I don't want to jump around, but one of the big projects that create a lot of frustration has been Westphalia. And we look and we compare Westphalia to South Lake up in Bowie. And they already have shopping there. The build out of the residences looks like it's nearly complete. How, within your understanding or experience, a lot of people have said, well, no project should be greenlit until there's a commitment from retailers and restaurateurs and businesses to go into the commercial area of a project. How realistic is that? And would you say that South Lake is the exception and not the rule, particularly in Prince George's County?
That is a really good question. And it's very complicated in some ways, but it's also very easy. When you have national retailers, commercial, who are interested in these sites, because let's be honest, as much when you are doing the very beginning of the project, it's hard to get a mom and pop retailer to be one of your anchor tenants that you know is going to be ready to open the doors and help pay bills and people are going to want to see. So you look for your national tenants. I do know with South Lake, they just have like the newest giant in the county. They have other retail, but I believe that project was many, many years in the making, and the residential portion of the property was developed first. And I think there's a lot of residential area there that's already been developed. And so what's in Westphalia is a little bit different of an animal. Every property is different. Every situation is different. Like Westphalia has a lot of additional price or cost associated with it, because when the Westphalia Town Center sector plan was approved in 2007, and the preliminary plan, I believe, in 2008 was approved in 2008, it included additional expenses that were to be borne by the developers. That included major upgrades to Pennsylvania Avenue, Woodyard Road, and a lot of the other facilities in that area. And that kind of goes to the overall financing of the project. And for commercial, and that just kind of slows down when developers are looking, or home builders are looking to build out the residences. But why, and going back to your actual question about why doesn't commercial maybe come before the residential property, the short answer is the markets show you need to have rooftops and people there to support the commercial, or the commercial is going to fail. If you have the commercial first and nobody's living there, it's just not going to be successful.
Well, the income, and we have the people. Why isn't our density enough for them to come? Can you I don't know if you know the markers or how many people they're looking, the foot traffic they're looking to come in and out their stores, but do you have an idea? Could you kind of explain that a little bit?
That one is a little bit beyond my expertise,
Okay.
Sherman. I'll be honest, because that is more of the financing, market study people to do the development. I just kind of help guide through the process. And I can tell you this is the information they say, but when it comes to the actual specifics, that's just, I couldn't tell you.
Okay. And while we're on the subject, and thank you, Levon, for bringing this up, because I actually wanted to get into this. I wanted to ask what legal or structural barriers in Prince George's prevents Prince George's from attracting the kind of development we see in places like Northern Virginia or Montgomery County. Is there a component to that as well?
So I think a lot of other land use attorneys would come on here and say there's a silver bullet, and if you did this, development would come. I think there's a little bit more nuance there. But I do think that the easy answer, and the one is a lot of the confusion over the process. When you look at Prince George's County development, you're not just dealing with Prince George's County, you're dealing with Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, Soil Conservation District, WSSC. You could be dealing with State Highway, MDE, and everybody has their own little bite of the apple here. And a lot of times they can be conflicting. What Park and Planning is telling you to do may be different than what DPI and stormwater management wants you to do. And you could be getting two completely conflicting comments that have both 100% authority, and you designed it towards the regs you believe be applicable, and you don't quite know how to even comply with it.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a lot of the confusion there. You have a lot of uncertainty and delays in the process. And uncertainty really is, as I kind of talked about early on, the political uncertainty when you have the district council that rightly or wrongly has inserted themselves in the process, which is unlike any other county in the area, unlike areas in Virginia, unlike other states in the area. So, and you honestly, you also have some of the actions done by the newer councils or councils in general that give the perception of that Prince George's County is open for business, that is, Prince George's County is closed for business.
And
Now,
that's a good segue. I'm sorry, I know I'm jumping all over the place, but
that's fine.
The next question I did want to ask is, do you believe Prince George's County is open for business, or are developers starting to look elsewhere? I mean, I know you, I've seen some of the pictures. You went to Vegas as well with the council, and what was the impression that from you guys' side of the table? What was the impression of Prince George's County, or is it a hindrance, or what's going on with that?
So I was not in. I was not in Vegas this year, but I have talked to people who did go.
Okay.
And the perception, I don't want to say it's the reality. The perception is Prince George's County is too difficult to develop.
When I was in the military, they said perception is everything.
Well, as an attorney, I can't give you 100% guarantee or say anything it's true, because that you just never know. As a quantifiable idea, permits do take longer in Prince George's County than they do in other counties or other states. What could be done in maybe 90 days in North Carolina could take you about 2 or 3 years in Prince George's. That's what I'm hearing from home builders. Yeah. And the state of Maryland maybe isn't much better, but it certainly isn't the 2 to 3 years overall. When you have, let's say, the land zone for it, and you're just going through the approval process to make sure that it's satisfactory with the area. So there are certainly things that can be done to improve Prince George's County's perception. And there are certain things you could certainly do to improve the process itself. But I think that Prince George's County is still a great place to invest. Bless you. But it does take patience and time. And sometimes that's hard when you have a lot of money on the line. Huh?
I said the residents are running out of patience. They want, the Cheesecake Factory. They want an Apple store. And also they're trying to figure out, and I know you kind of touched on it with the lopsidedness of the commercial. People feel as though you guys build the buildings and also put people in them.
Yeah. When you say put people in them, do you mean in the, like you mean we fill the spots?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And then after this, I'll let LaVon go because she has a hand raised as well. But go ahead, please.
Yeah, I one point to that point. So when I first started in this business, there was a term that was thrown around a lot called a spec building, and I'm sure you've heard of that term, right? It's a building that someone just builds and then the tenants come in. Since I've been doing this, I have not seen one spec building built. Nobody breaks ground on a project without having at least one major tenant lined up, because it's too uncertain. So we don't bring the people here. We don't build the buildings and then just people just come in. We have to have the interest first for anyone to be willing to invest and have that project go forward.
Okay. Thank you. So can you talk about people have been upset about all of the townhouses that are being built? And people don't understand that you can buy the land, pay your permitting fee, however long it is before it expires and has to be renewed, but there's no obligation, there's no timeline on when you have to break ground. It doesn't matter. As long as you're paying your taxes, and your holder's permit or whatever it's called as a landowner, you can come back in 20 years and build a project. I mean, we've had market explosions, we've had market to downfall, we've had recessions, all kinds of ups and downs. So can you address that a little bit about what the rights of a landowner, what their rights are?
So that is also another really great question. And it's correct and it's also not correct. And I'll get
Okay.
into the difference here.
Well, I'm speaking in layman's, how the community,
No,
So you
no,
give
no,
us
that's
expert language.
you know, no, and I commend you for even asking that question as succinctly and clearly as you did. I didn't know anything about land use till I started getting into this practice, and it's one of those things where you look at like a car, right? A car is complicated, but then you also think, I could probably fix that if it breaks, until you actually try it and you're like, oh no, this is not gonna, no, this made it way worse, right?
Right.
Um, but yeah, sorry, to answer your question about the plats. Under the old zoning ordinance, which has been superseded for any new development, if you went through your preliminary plan, your detailed site plan, and your record plat, your rights were vested in perpetuity. You could break ground today, tomorrow, 30 years, whenever the market seemed right. That is no longer the case. And actually, you're right, it's no longer the case for any development. If you have a preliminary plan and you have record plats, you only have the rights to do what you had approved for about 12 years, maybe 18 if you get an extension, because then after that time, you will be required to test your adequacy. So your lots may still be there, but you can't build right away. You have to retest your adequacy. And if there has been a large amount of development in the area that's such that the roads cannot handle what you had originally envisioned, you would be on the hook for that additional expenses before you could break ground again. So, but even to get to that point, right? Development is a risky game, little facetious here. And you generally have to do it and you have to be able to make money, right? Because you have employees, you have costs, you have expenses. And if you're a developer that doesn't make money, you're not going to be in business for very long.
Well, developers don't make money. I thought they were making millions and billions off of the community. At least that's, what we're led to believe.
I wish that was the case. And, it's just like I wish I was corrupt as everyone says I am as a land use attorney, because life would be so much easier. Again, it's a game where you can make good money, but you have lots of expenses and you have a lot of risk. You, as I said, may be in a situation where you go 3-4 years of expenses and no profit. So you have to be able to incur that risk and get that reward, not just to maybe pay off the expenses you already have, pay back the loans you took out to do it, but hopefully to set up the next investment to help keep your company afloat, pay your employees, pay your contractors, pay your taxes. So
those 2 years that you're holding for permits, you're still paying for everything and paying the taxes or whatever it is on the property. Because a lot of people feel as though those things are deferred for you all, or and you pay taxes in lieu of, stuff like that. So how does that process actually work, as in the sense of for building?
In what respects, like the cost of development overall, or the costs incurred? I'm not quite sure.
Are you talking about a TIF, Sherman, when they get TIFs?
Or pilot?
Not necessarily the TIFs, but the community perception is that developers are supposed to build the schools, they're supposed to build the roads and everything else, and then you also pay the taxes thereafter. But instead of paying the taxes, a lot of times there's in lieu of the taxes, they pay a lump sum earlier on in order to prevent having to do those down the road. And the community feel as though like they're left without options, and developers are taking the big portion of the pie, essentially. So that's what I was trying to get a better understanding of.
Yeah. Okay. That helps explain it. So there is a lot of costs. I can't tell you what the profit margin is.
Mhm.
And I can't tell you exactly what everything happens, but it is a risky game and there's a lot of costs involved with it that are not just the development itself. Um, the pilot or the TIF, that's a separate tax agreement that a project or developer would have with the county council to help do alternative financing. And that's something that goes through public scrutiny. It goes through a rigorous test to see what the money would be like. And it's it's sort of like, you take out a loan based upon what your future rate of return is going to be. And it's not as subjective as what the market would say, because you know that you are going to be building 200 homes. Those 200 homes are going to pay X in property taxes, and that will help recoup the losses that maybe the county incurred in the meantime to help fund the development. So that's money that is actually going to be paid back, and that's not speculative. They're going to be sold and it's going to be made.
Mhm.
But when it comes to the development, as I said, the developers have been paying for roads. They've been paying to give land to park and planning. They've been paying to do park areas. They've been paying for other improvements. And one of the things that's interesting about, let's say, schools is when it comes to, let's say, offsetting the impacts for schools. There is two ideas nationally of how this can be done: through development impact fees and through an excise tax. So the county has chosen to do it through an excise tax, which basically means that when for every building permit, the county or the developer has to pay X amount of dollars. Right now, that amount, and this goes towards the general fund because it's quote unquote earmarked for schools.
Mhm.
If you're inside the Beltway, you off the bat have to pay $12,220 per dwelling unit every time you pull a building permit. Outside the Beltway, that's $20,972.
Wow.
So for a 100-unit subdivision, single family, multifamily, townhouse, regardless, you are paying 1.2 million inside the Beltway and 2.97 outside the Beltway off the top. That's not negotiable. I mean, sometimes it's negotiable, but that is fact. That doesn't go towards any other cost. That's just money that has to be paid at that time.
But then there are waivers. They do waivers on these things too. So
They do waivers, and a lot of times it would be senior housing, or it'd be if you're near transit, or it might be part of a TIF program. But a lot of times that's money that is just part of the actual development, and it's just part of the cost. And that's it's an excise tax. And one of the reasons it's done that, and it goes towards the general fund, because if it was done as an impact fee, that there is a constitutional principle called the Nolan Dolan, based on these two cases, that if you have a development, you can be charged impact fees, but those impact fees have to be a nexus to where you are. Like it has to be, where the money goes has to be close to the location, and it has to be proportional. So the idea of this flat 20,000 rate of unit outside the Beltway is not proportional, because it's not really based upon those type of figures. And the other detriment to development impact fees is that it has to be in the area where you're developing, because there has to be a nexus. So if you're doing something down in Brandywine, that money couldn't be spent up in, let's say, Laurel or Bowie to do school repairs, rehabilitation, because there's no nexus. It would have to be in that area. So there are the pros and cons, and the county has chosen to do this excise tax option. And that's for public schools. That money goes to the general fund. We as a developer pay that money towards schools, but we don't have any control of what happens to it.
woo, my goodness, you just said a whole mouthful right there. I mean, I'm sure you're aware of the war between the North and the South, and the northern part of the
Yeah, that was the
county
next
gets
question.
more development than the southern part of the county. Have you worked in other jurisdictions where the rural tier, it's a three-tiered jurisdiction where people are confused about between what they want and what they say they want?
Unfortunately, I have, and it's kind of this same. What I will say is that I think the attitude in Prince George's County has shifted since I began, where I do think that many other areas when I had started off were much more and kind of remain anti-development. And I think Prince George's County, a lot of the residents when I started, they may not have liked the development. I'm not going to say that we were always welcomed with open arms wherever we went, right? I'm not that stupid. But they understood the role development played, and they felt like everyone maybe was looking out for each other's interests. Now I do think there is more suspicion. There is a lot more of hostility. And there could be for many things, right? I think Ms. Thomas, you had mentioned just the war between the North and the South, of where maybe development's happening and the money's going somewhere else and all that. So I don't know if that plays into it or not, but it's kind of a shame to see that trust being eroded between the public, your public officials, the government, and sort of, your developers. Not, again, is every developer a saint? No, I'm not going to come in here and say that. Are some of them devils? Probably. Everyone everywhere there's devils, right?
Every job, right?
Was that?
And I know I said every job has,
every job, yeah.
that employee, it's unavoidable, and they leave that job and go to the next one. I want to get to some of the comments in the chat if we can. And while we're on South County, I definitely want to bring this up. The question is South County a better bet for development?
Ooh, what a good question too.
Yeah, because it has so many moving pieces to South County.
Yeah. And yes, again, you're trying to pin down a lawyer with a yes or no question, and there's always a shade of gray. It has more available land, right? Because it just has not been it doesn't date back to the streetcar suburbs. It doesn't date back, necessarily to the growth of the DC in the post-war era. So you do have a lot more land that can be developed, but
we don't have the infrastructure.
Sorry?
We don't have the infrastructure. We have the land, but we don't have the infrastructure.
And that's the other point, right? You might have the land, but what's the infrastructure? What can you actually do there? And if you maybe could get 100 homes, but you have to do $10-15 million in road improvements, it may just not be financially feasible. So, and a lot of it is kind of the politics of the area. You have basically one council member for a lot of the South County, right? District 9 covers a lot of what I would consider to be the South County. Maybe you have some District 8 down there too. So each district council member is kind of the king or queen of their district. And so you have one or two people maybe to control the South County, where you have 7 or 8 people for the rest of the county that you kind of maybe have different opportunities to do it. And it just kind of depends on that. So you have your land, you have lack of infrastructure, and you may also, which is good or bad, depending on who's the council member at that time, more political support or less political support.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And do you think the county gets a fair return on its public investments in private development?
I think they do. I understand the perception. I understand that it feels like, if you're a homeowner and you're with inflation, utility bills going up, cost of everything going up, you could feel peeved when you see some news article saying X and X development just got approved for 200 million in financing, right? I think it's not necessarily, I don't think it should be seen as a giveaway. I think it should be seen as an investment by the county, because yes, it may be hard up front, but that is also going to be bringing in more tax revenue, not just because of the residential property taxes, but that may also then encourage more commercial businesses, maybe even manufactural, industrial to go in there. And so the county in the long run, yes, they maybe got $200 million, they spent $200 million, but they're going to be getting, $300 million in the next 10, 15 years or so, right? So it is an investment. And I think if it's done correctly and smartly, it is worth it.
Yeah. And if
So
you
I
could
have a
change a
question.
law,
I'm sorry, you have some more in the chat?
just this, and then we can, I'll leave it be. If you could change one law or policy to improve how land is developed in Prince George's County, what would it be?
Get rid of call up, get rid of the district council's ability to have their own say on any detailed site plan.
But I thought that's what I was referencing. I couldn't think of the term. I thought call-ups were disallowed or frowned. They're definitely frowned upon, especially if it's done out of vengeance or vindictiveness. So is that the 3 points that you referenced when I asked the question?
The arbitrary, capricious, or illegal decision standard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you have, how do I say this with, again, trying to be as transparent as possible, but not put too much of my own spin on it, right?
You can bypass if you want. We'll allow it.
No. I think this is important because I think it's a very unique situation in that the call-up provision gives politicians, not planners, a lot of impact on development, whether it's and how it, and whether it goes forward or not. It can be used as a protection tool, right? But it can also then be used as a tool for extortion, not blatant, but hey, pay. If the district council can say, well, if you give money to this community nearby, maybe I'll turn a blind eye to everything that's going on. So it does, because again, politicians, unlike the planning board, they're beholden to their constituents, and constituents, while maybe have legitimate gripes, they're not the ones that come and protest at hearings, right, or oppose hearings. They don't speak necessarily for the entire community.
Mm-hmm.
And it shouldn't always be whoever's loudest is rightest, despite what my college friend would always say and yell at me about. But yeah, the call-up creates a lot of uncertainty, and it makes development too political. And I think that's really where you have an issue.
Okay, so we can take from that you don't have call-ups in other jurisdictions.
No other Maryland jurisdiction has the call-up procedure, and I don't. When we explain this to out-of-state developers or even out-of-county developers, they look at me like I have an arm grown out of my head. When they're like, "What do you mean? I'm permitted by right. What is this call-up thing?" And you have to go, "Well, yes, you're permitted by right, but you can still be denied or death by 1,000 cuts and delays because of this call-up."
Okay. So I worked in the Baker administration. And so I remember when DPI was set up and 311 was set up, Office of Central Services had some improvements made in how they did things. And then in the successive administration, procurement was pulled out of the Office of Central Services. And during the Senate campaign, there was a lot of talk about, getting rid of DPI and pulling everything back together. So I've seen the effort to streamline or improve this process with developers. Do you have an ideal example of, you don't have to say which jurisdiction it is, but where's what does your favorite place to do a project? What's that process look like? Because the public really doesn't understand the complexity of it all. They just see the hearing signs go up, and my peeve is we can't read them. They're not safely placed. And then, there's a bulldozer So can you talk about what your ideal process has been?
Well, yes, but my ideal process means I'm out of a job because the whole process is simple. Part of the reason you have such a big land use bar in Prince George's County is because it's complicated. You do have a lot of the moving parts. Um, I so I've only really known DPI, and I applaud your efforts as being part of the conglomeration of what was it, DER and DPW. I know
Yes.
DPW is still there, but it kind of was brought under one roof.
Well, no, they were separated.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. Yes, they're separated. Yes. But you did try to bring a lot of the functions together. The
Yes.
problem is you still have so many different agencies that all have different mandates, right? Because, DPI is a county run organization that answers to the county executive. Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission is a bi-state agency that kind of has its own jurisdiction and it's governed by the land use article. State highway is state highway, and they do what they want to do. Or, they control ultimately. Soil conservation is like a quasi Prince George's County agency, but it doesn't really listen to, I think, the county executive or the county council. So you do have a lot of, again, it's not necessarily over regulation because I think a lot of these things are important to protect development, protect neighborhoods, protect everybody. But you have a lot of conflict between what is actually how things are being reviewed and approved because they have so many different review cycles, so many different people weighing in with different expertise, and nobody defers to anyone else. It's just all these comments are kind of thrown together. So I do think if you could do a one-stop shop with, let's say just getting rid of park and planning, and that never happened, bless you. And everything was done through DPI as the lead who did zoning and technical issues. That may speed things up. But then again, you'd have to really change the land use article and change the fundamentals of zoning, and I just don't see that happening.
So most places don't have their council serving as the land use authority either, right?
Exactly.
As the district council.
I believe in sometimes it can be like you might have them as an appellate body when they won't have the right to hear a case themselves. They can't just say, well, I want to call this up and maybe call it into question. They may be able to hear an appeal here and there, but yeah, they don't. No other county has the district council insert themselves in the process the way Prince George's does. Even Montgomery County, yeah.
Yeah, we know that the park and planning makes it pretty unique. I have an environmental question, and then I have a question that came through
on the chat.
Our internal chat, but I want to ask you about environment. People get upset and say we need trees for canopy and the air and all of that. And I always say that trees don't pay taxes, and you can't tell people what to do with their land. And I know that we have some generational overturn here in Prince George's County with our farmlands. I live in a HOA community, and I back up to a preserve area. And can you just talk a little bit about why, what your thoughts are about, because you did mention a developer gives land sometimes to park and planning. So can you just elaborate on that for our environmentally concerned viewers?
Yeah, more than happy to. So the landscape, natural vegetation, trees, shrubs, it comes into play a lot of times in a development, right? Because you can't just put up a parking lot with asphalt and walk away. There is going to be landscaping, so there is going to be some tree planting, there is going to be bushes, shrubs, things to help out. And if your development is of a certain size, what you do is you dedicate parkland to park and planning, either for recreational facilities or maybe as part of the simultaneous tree canopy. One of the concerns really that there's been is that when you don't look at tree conservation strategically, you kind of lose the forest for the trees. There we go.
The benefit of it, yeah.
Yeah. Like if you are doing a rehab development in Oxon Hill, and maybe there's like 5 scrawny trees somewhere in the corner that really wouldn't be worth keeping in any rate. Well, it makes more sense for you to maybe buy up a tree canopy or tree base somewhere else to help preserve that in some other part of the county for future generations and really help, woodland and wildlife areas thrive versus, having to fight to the death to save 5 scrawny trees in an already developed area. Again, it's not that there's not going to be any planting there. It's just that those maybe replanted or old growth trees wouldn't necessarily be as useful overall than additional plantings elsewhere in the county. So the environment is a very tricky thing. There are a lot of regulations for it. I think in some respects the regulations may have gone too far. And one prime example was a couple years ago, there was this bill. I think it was it wasn't Climate Solutions Now, because that's a newer one. It was a state bill.
Oh, that's
Um,
talking about, yeah.
yeah, there was some about preserving trees. Well, that's a great idea, but the way the bill was drafted is that it actually discouraged preserving forest so that you would limit development in like denser areas because you had to build more trees there. So really what it did is that if you were a farmer and you could get paid to keep trees on your property, well, they removed that incentive. So as a farmer, you had no incentive to
Mhm.
keep any trees. You might as well just cut them down and sell them for lumber.
Mm.
And everyone kind of realized that it was like, this is kind of silly. We won't do it. But you then had environmentalists come out and say, well, no, every tree has to be kept. And they actually opposed that bill. And it was very frustrating to be like, okay, yes, we understand you want to preserve trees. This process doesn't preserve trees. It doesn't preserve the trees you want to keep. It actually discourages their preservation. But they were just so adamant that it wasn't, it was difficult to go through it. Thankfully, cooler heads prevailed for the most part. But it's been a huge fight, and the environment is important. I'm not going to come in here and say it's not. But
Because
you're
especially for
right, trees don't pay
stormwater,
taxes.
having the ability to having those trees or the available land to allow the water to penetrate back through the ground, that's crucial because we see a lot of flooding that happens within certain parts of the county. There's a question that came through the chat, Nate, and it says, "I'm a little tired of the gaslighting. Developers claim to build affordable housing, but who is it affordable to? They build into these neighborhoods, but nobody can afford the price tag. So who are they building the housing for?" And we both sat on the Hoffa committee, and this was a major concern. And what we tried to figure out, what is affordable, based on the area.
So you're the commenter. I'm not going to gaslight you and say housing is affordable. It's not. There is an economic impediment to building affordable housing. As I had mentioned, if as the developer, you are paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for the engineering work. I have fees, traffic consultants have fees, architects have fees. So you're looking at just developing your plans. That's maybe a couple $1 million there. Then you have your construction documents, which are another couple $1 million in permits and review fees. You have your impact fees to the county, where you're paying, per unit $30,000 before you have a shovel in the ground because you have to pull the building permit.
2 years
So,
of
hmm,
interest. 2 years of
interest,
interest.
yeah, you're paying on the loan you took out to even do the development. So at the end of the day, you are looking where, yeah, you could build a home maybe for $200,000, but you're taking $200,000 loss on that. And again, you wouldn't stay in business for very long if you didn't make money. If you couldn't pay your employees. So there are a lot of issues. Part of it is the length of the process, right? That adds up for the amount of costs you have to carry over until you can actually start returning a profit. So you have to have houses cost a certain amount of money just to recoup that. Um, what else was I going to say? So, and then, there's still a market for that house, right?
Mhm.
That these homes are going up And because there is such a demand for them and a negative supply, that even if you, I guess you could always sell for less than you could get maximum market rate. But again, you want to be able then to finance your next development and do your next thing. There's no real benefit when you're already out $300,000 and you have to make another 100, 150, 200 to just break even, right?
Yeah, because I mean, most of us have seen the HGTV with the flip or sell or whatever it's called, and they're calculating how much their next project is going to be based upon the one that they just finished, and if they don't have the reserves and the capital necessary, then it's going to be quite challenging in order to move forward with those next projects. And also, the investors are going to be looking and saying, well, we gave you this amount, with an anticipation of, this return on investment based on your facts and figures. What happened. So that's a problem as well.
Right. And land is expensive in Prince George's County. I mean, the land alone is not cheap. So before you even do anything else, you got to get your money back for at least what you purchase your land for.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Unless somehow you were lucky enough to have, a relative have a farm somewhere, and they bequeathed it to you and you're starting with zero, but even then you're still paying taxes on it.
Right.
You're still then paying for any sort of other upkeep.
So yeah, I'm sorry, you have something else?
No.
I have a superficial kind of question. I'm a
superficial guy, so it's okay.
I have a friend who works in the new home market, and they sell out these townhouses by the time section 1 is up and occupied. Let's say they have 4 sections. They're already selling out section number 4, right? So there is a demand. And what I'm always curious about is where's the disconnect between the demand, the objection of the people, and the fact that all of these communities look alike. The elevations are so just boring. And I've asked people, how do they see? I don't know why they're buying the houses, because I saw a community that's probably 15 years old, and the same community is still being built. And so I would just go buy an old house instead of buying a new house. So that's kind of a multi-dimensional question, but I think it all ties together.
Yeah, I'll answer that last part about why do all the homes look the same. And
access to
you want to know that too?
Well, I think I had a conversation with Griffin about this, about people feel like it's dated, and the face or the communities don't, it's not like some of the other areas. But go ahead, I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, and please jump in, Sherman, because the way I look at it is that Prince George's County, I think, did have some ugly developments, maybe in the 80s and 90s. I'm not going to, again, hide from that, maybe even earlier. So there was legitimate concern that there needed to be a minimum level of aesthetic with with how homes are built, right? Because you want homes to look nice. The problem is that's almost gone too far, in that by trying to set the floor, you actually set the ceiling, because no one is encouraged to go beyond that. And if that is what will be approved, that's what you're going to suggest. And it actually becomes much more of a gamble to be unique, to propose new materials. There is also this perception that masonry, brick, means quality, and you're going to be required to do a certain percentage of maybe the entire stick of townhomes, entire homes in development are going to be brick. So you can't even necessarily say have a lot of flexibility with some of the unique materials going on. And I'm sorry, Ms. Thomas, what was the other part of the question?
It was about the
the
the townhomes
demand
or the
that
demands.
people complain about the townhomes, but
Right.
yet they're selling out. And I always say nobody's going to build something just because they feel like it. They're doing it
Right.
because they know they're going to sell.
And Nate, before you jump into that, also give I don't know if you remember the ratio of the amount of townhomes we had to single family homes, because there it is truly lopsided. And this perception, like you want a red car, you see a red car everywhere, and you upset with townhomes, and now you see them being built everywhere. But in actuality, it was like less than 20% townhomes in the county, in the entire county.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, the majority of homes in Prince George's County are single family detached.
Mhm.
Um, that's the standard. I will say maybe you have more developments right now that are doing townhomes, partly because honestly, either you build townhomes or you build giant mansions because of the
Mhm.
economics. It's very hard to build,
And also the code.
and the code, yes, because of the code requirements and the zoning itself.
Mhm.
Um, it just isn't as economical or realistic to build what is, as I'm sure you know, Sherman, the missing middle. And it's
Mhm.
actually discouraged. It's
We
very
get
frustrating.
ADUs now, according to the state. So that's, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, one person in Brandywine can turn their garage into a apartment. That's going to solve all of our
Right.
housing problems. No, it's one of those things. It's always fascinating when you see these larger developments, multi-phase, multi-year developments, and the people that move in to phase one immediately turn around and start protesting the development of phase two, saying it's already too crowded. And it's just very frustrating when we have this mentality of I got mine, I'm pulling the ladder up, and I'm gonna stop you from getting yours. Um, you know, Again, if you have, hey, we live here and we actually think the way you designed that road wouldn't work for these reasons. Can you look at that? That makes sense, right?
Mhm.
Or we've enjoyed having maybe this area for a park or for open space. Could you maybe redesign townhomes so it doesn't discourage that? Fine, we'll look at that. Those are legitimate concerns. But if it's just like, oh no, we don't want more homes. Well, you bought into this community that envisioned 1,000 homes. You just happen to be one of the first there. So it's what necessary rights do you have to then try to stop others from enjoying the good living that you have?
Mhm. I'm definitely enjoying this conversation too much, but I have to let you go as well because I don't want to take up too much of your time. But before you go, I do have one last question. I promise.
No, it's fine.
DePi
I love
versus
talking about land use. It's, you
me
know,
too. DePi versus developers, and I said that way because a lot of people feel as though developers are building shardy homes and they get into them, and later down the line the foundation is messing up or this and that or the electrical. Is that a developer issue, or is that the permanent inspections through DPI, or
so
both?
I, I would say, I'm not going to comment on each contractor,
Mhm.
subcontractor doing the job that is supposed to be done. I like to think that if you have that contract, you're doing the best work that you can and you're not cutting corners, right? But again, you're also building to national standards that are reviewed and checked by DPI. We build under the law as the law requires. If the law for some reason doesn't envision that you should build a retaining wall Y because it's better and instead makes you build X and you build X and it fails, well, you followed the law and you got the guidance and the approvals to do it that way. Maybe if you had, and I don't know if it was even an opportunity to say, well, I think Y is better, because again, you then are like a salmon going upstream fighting to do something you think is better when it's not what the code says. And you then have to try to fight that and fight the approval process. So, and again, I don't think this is any sort of like DPI's fault. I really like and respect a lot of the people over at DPI. I think they're doing the best with the tools they have, and it's very complicated, right? Everything is hard. I think a great example of infrastructure improvements that show how challenging it is the Purple Line in Prince George's County. My office is in Greenbelt, and I'm going to College Park as part of my job as municipal attorney there, along with Stephanie Anderson, or I'm going down to Hyattsville District Court and I'm seeing a lot of those purple line improvements. And, you know, when you actually think about what it takes to put in a light rail track on existing roads, there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of things that can go wrong or change. And at the end of the day, everyone is humans, and you put in your checks and balances and all your safety features and redundancies, but you can't control everything that happens. And I think most people are doing the best they can, whether they are using the right materials or not. I don't know, but it's materials that we've said is the best available.
Mhm.
Does that answer your question? I know it's kind of off. Like,
It answers it. Thank you. Levon, did you have anything before we let you go? Levon, are you there?
Sorry, I was on mute.
Oh.
You kind of hit on this a little bit, but we're going to push you a little bit more, I guess, in a concise way, or targeted way.
I'm gonna plead the fifth before you start. I'm pleading the fifth.
They wanted 5 bullets, but I won't ask you to do 5 bullets. But what do you believe can help the development process to be more revenue effective? Like, how do we make money, increase our revenues from development? And I just wanted to add, because I had thought about this and hadn't gotten to say it. The other hiccup that happens with the way our development process works is that you were talking about the different entities. And when there's a disconnect, that can cost people. I've heard about people thinking they were about to go through their office renovation only to find out there was some new code that didn't exist when the project started, and they had to go and resubmit their architectural plans, right? So it is a very tedious, expensive process. But if you can give us your insight as to how development can become more revenue beneficial to the taxpayers.
Yeah, I think, you know, making instilling more certainty into the development process. And I'm not saying that, you know, skirting your stormwater management requirements or fire life safety. It's no, okay, we are going to provide you with good looking product with these materials. Don't then delay it or make it into account because it's not 40% brick when that's just an arbitrary number. So kind of include the certainty, getting the district council out of it. I think getting residents to really understand the development process, and again, that's a tall order. This is not easy. But a lot of times, you know, having these community meetings and there to explain the process, and people just say like, no, I don't want it. Well, it's already zoned for this, and it actually has an approval. We're just trying to modify that approval to make it fit what we believe you've already said you wanted in previous hearings, and now you're just saying no. You know, but again, citizens are going to they're going to have their concerns. Honestly, I think one of the things, and to maybe cast out on ourselves, is maybe a little bit more openness with the development community. I think in some respects there is this idea of it being opaque. I always try to be as open and transparent as I can. You know, if you're asking me to make a fundamental change to a project, I will say I don't think we can do it. We'll look at it, but I don't think it's going to be feasible. So I do think that there needs to be a change in overall attitude. There needs to be a development of a growth of trust again between the development community and the citizens, kind of a little bit more certainty in the process. There needs to be a little bit more, I think, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, not free will with lower levels, but more delegation and more autonomy from your initial staff level reviewers, where in certain agencies you get a comment back and you try to discuss with them, and you have to go through 2 or 3 different levels of supervisor before you can get a resolution because no one's willing to make that change. So I think there's some like fear of accountability, which I think is part of the culture. I think so. If we could do some of those things, I think that would really start help uh, uh, getting development going, getting people more excited about investing. I think, the perception again, as we talked about, is Prince George's is not open for business, and that it's almost more of you hold your nose, go in, and hopefully it all works out, as opposed to being excited to want to invest here.
Mhm.
I think those things could really help out. And I do want to, if we're ending now, I am more than happy to be back on and give updates and talk and answer more questions. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it for the hour I did right now, but
Right,
uh,
right.
I'm more than happy to assist. I love talking land use. I love talking
Yeah.
to an audience that wants to learn and, wants Prince George's to grow.
Yeah, and we need to figure out how we can build relations between the council, the developers, and the community, whichever way that is. Because, like you say, this has to be a cohesive relationship where we all work together for the common good and the common goal. And also, everybody out there watching, I want you to remember that Prince George's is a county, not a city. And I believe that's part of the perception what we have, and people always get that confused. And it's not the case. We're less than 1 million people. There are some large cities, but again, thank you.
Yeah,
You go
500
ahead. I'm sorry.
square miles,
Mhm,
a little less than 1 million people. That's a lot of land to try to govern in a very same way, which is just very difficult. And
mhm,
before you do kick me off, and I'll go,
mhm,
the one council member I will say that's been doing a great job recently is Council Member Crystal Oriata from
mhm,
District 7. She has tried to get developers and herself together to understand it. Now, I think she's still very new. She's only been on the council for about 2 years now, but she's making efforts.
mhm.
So there has been some efforts to understand it, but not everyone has taken those steps. So I just want to make sure that's
Understood.
on the record.
Awesome,
All
awesome.
right.
Thank you so
Thank
much for putting
you.
that on the record, and we'll definitely give her kudos for it. Take care, Nate, and again, we'll be seeing you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Likewise.
Bye bye.
All right, and we are going to be bringing up Carolyn next.
Caroline.
Caroline, I'm sorry. Yes, I keep messing up that lady
He
name, and she
can't
don't give
help
me.
it. He country. He country.
Very. Bring her on now, and are you able to turn your camera, please?
Unmute.
Okay.
Testing, testing. How I'm doing? Can you hear me? Can you see me okay?
Yes, awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, earlier we were definitely having
Good.
issues, but it looks like we have gotten them
Happen?
resolved. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
No problem.
And
Tonight.
so I definitely wanted to introduce you, the internet sensation that has been blowing up across the air. No, you are, because for one, everybody in the DMV pretty much knows you at some point, or have seen one of your TikToks, your Instagrams, or something like that. But my dad, is in Miami, Florida, and whenever he sees something, that's where I'm from. Whenever he sees something pop up online, it has something to do with Prince George's County, he'll send it to me. And one of the videos was you, and I was like, wow. And you were going
You
in
watch
on a lot of the
Hey,
elected officials. So,
Dad.
what brought about that? All of a sudden we just, we saw your videos, and you were just, it seemed like you were frustrated with a lot of things. And in some videos you talk about why we aren't, growing or progressing as a county. Can you give us a little bit of background of who you are and how you have become introduced into this world of not just politics, but government here in the county?
Sure, sure. So again, hey everyone, and thank you so much for having me on, and thank you, Sherman, for this great platform. My name is Caroline Jhingory. I am a resident. I'm a DC native, tried and true. Through my mother, I am a fifth generation Washingtonian, and through my biological father, I am a first generation Guyanese American. My father is from Guyana, and I was raised from age 7 on up until his death by my stepfather, Roscoe Ridley Jr., who is leadership or who was leadership with the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, which is a entity that is responsible and oversees much of the economic investment when it comes to transportation, housing, just healthcare across DC, Maryland, and Virginia, meaning that my stepfather carried a lot of weight when politicians wanted the support of Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments. And I lead with that because that means since my childhood, I've had politicians, whether they were council members, um, in PG and Maryland, council members in both DC and Maryland, to the county executive in my home, essentially begging my parents for money, but really giving their pitch on why they would be a good candidate. And with that, sometimes I wasn't supposed to be listening to grown folks' conversation, or even when I was an adult, I'm not supposed to be listening to these conversations. But I absolutely ear hustled on the conversations with everyone from Marion Barry to Angela Also Brooks to is it Everett Browning and Aisha Brayboy in my parents' house. And one element I'll add right there with Aisha Brayboy's dad and my dad were essentially best friends for over 50 years. And let me know if I'm getting ahead of myself as
No, you're
well.
fine.
Our DC Water is where Aisha Brayboy's father was probably the third in command for a number of years. Aisha Brayboy's father, in his role at DC Water as a political favor and as a brotherhood favor to my father, hired a lot of people at DC Water that were incompetent, that had been fired from other jobs for sexual harassment. And that includes also hiring my blood brother, Kevin Jhingory, who is now the general foreman at DC Water. On background, my blood brother, Kevin Jhingory, was fired from the DC Housing Authority for sexual harassment of numerous public housing residents, could not get a job anywhere. My dad picked up the phone, my dad, who's the head of the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, and Aisha Brayboy's father got him a job, and he did the same for a lot of people. And I'm mentioning these things because it speaks to the political loyalty. And I will tell you firsthand that my stepfather, the labor, and I also want to give my stepfather all of his credit, the pay increase that DC government employees experienced in the late 90s, it was a 3-4% pay increase. My stepfather was 100% behind the collective bargaining agreement that made that pay increase. And I'm just speaking to the political loyalty people have to my stepfather. So all these people, mostly DC government employees that now live in Prince George's County, if my stepfather says vote for Boo Boo the fool or vote for Boo Boo the dummy, they will vote. So with every one labor union leader, it comes their whole family, their communities vote. So whoever my stepfather has that kind of power. And I believe that you all may have saw a clip I showed of Justin Fairfax in Virginia when he spoke at my stepfather's funeral. He said, my stepfather's name was Roscoe Ridley Jr. Because of your stepfather, I became the second Black lieutenant governor in Virginia's 100, 200 plus year history. And I'm just speaking to loyalty and corruption, et cetera. So I hope I'm answering your question. And
Yeah.
also my stepfather, he had a big belief that the more inexperienced and incompetent, he said this about Aisha, the more inexperienced and incompetent a person is, they're more likely to bend and engaged in corruption.
Mhm.
And let me jump in anytime. My stepfather's first
Mhm.
hand perspective of Aisha. Number one, I did ear hustle, but after anyone came over the house, it was just me and my stepfather's thing. And I'm just saying he's my stepfather. I called him my dad, but for the purposes of this conversation, I'm saying my stepfather. We
Continue.
recapped. He talked candidly about everybody. And he said that he does not believe that Aisha is the brightest crayon in the box. But you know, my stepdad called Mr. Brayboy Brayboy. He never said brave boy. So when you guys always hear me saying Brayboy, 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 it's just how my dad pronounced Aisha's name.
Yeah.
So he said, you know, all that Brayboy did for your brother wouldn't have been able to buy his house if Brayboy didn't give your father a job. We got to support Aisha, but I don't think that she's the brightest crayon in the box. But whatever we need, and by we, he meant the labor union community or political favors like getting people out of drunk driving parking tickets, which Aisha has done plenty for my brother. She would do it, and she's showing that she's doing it. And when we talked previously, you said you want people to understand Aisha's loyalty to Jack Johnson. I'm not sure that I completely understand it. Number one, Aisha gave Leslie Johnson that job in her office because no one's hiring them with their background. They have they have federal convictions. They are on tape stuffing money in their bra. No one is going to hire Jack Johnson. And I'm sorry if anyone's new here. Jack and Leslie Johnson are the former county executives of Prince George's County, lawyers, attorneys, that when the FBI was banging at their door and breaking out windows, they're having a phone call in terms of trying to figure out how to discard money. And he tells his wife to put it in her bra and panties and flush it down the toilet. So, anyways, they did their time, but no one's going to hire them. And Aisha's office became the only place where they could get a good government job and get health insurance. They're in their 70s. No one will hire them. That's what that's about. But regarding the loyalty, I would only say that Jack Johnson knows where some bodies or bones are buried related to Aisha. I've heard on paper people say that Aisha is staying loyal to Jack Johnson because he still has respectability with the economic and development community. That's bullshit. No one, if that was the case, they wouldn't be begging Aisha for a job in her office. But there's something with Jack Johnson that he knows where some bones or bodies are buried. And that's how it often works in political relationships. And
And I just
yeah,
want
was
to
that an
ask
intro?
really quick as well. Uh,
Sure.
right? Let it all hang out. From your perspective, why hasn't Prince George's County lived up to its full potential, despite the wealth, the talent, and the strategic location?
The strategic location located next to the walking distance from the most important city in the world. I think that Prince George, I think pro blackness and black pride is a very good thing, but I also think that it can cripple economies and communities economically. Prince George's County has been very much, it needs to be black our way. It's the only way. We all black. We're not open to collaboration and different ideas
So,
if
are you
black
saying the
isn't going
most
to.
most affluent, or used to be, county in the U.S.? Are you saying that that's a hindrance by continuously saying that we're the most affluent Black place?
It is. And I think when it, and I would also apply that to black businesses. And if you have it, you tell me. I don't know of any data, any research promoting the adjective black in front of anything that brings high net worth individuals, that brings economic investment when it comes to black restaurants, when promoting that you're a black team. I have not seen any research or data. Maybe during that little post George Floyd, black was in vogue. We were popular for about 10 minutes after George Floyd, but I have not seen any research or data that shows promoting you're the wealthiest black county, or you're a black restaurant, or you have the most black homeowners, even though a lot are in foreclosure in Prince George's County, that will bring economic investment. And it becomes, and we have to say what it is. The world with money is white. It's not black.
Woo,
It doesn't look like us. And we
girl.
have to be, and it's white. It ends in the last name Rosenthal and Jewish and Stein and Horowitz. And that's not attractive to them. It's not even attractive to other black people when they hear black. A lot of times as black people, we're not gonna lie, as soon as we hear a black owned business, we go in with the
Something
perspective like,
wrong with
oh
it.
Lord, it's gonna be some shit. We walk in like,
Hmm.
oh Lord, it's gonna be some bullshit in here. As soon as we hear black, it's within our own community. And I don't think that, number one, Prince George's County, from the marketing side and how it promotes itself, it's not effective with the black stuff. And they're very much into performative antics. Let's
So
have a
Caroline,
community event, a community. Oh, sorry.
that's okay. So
Yes,
Caroline,
ma'am.
let me I just want to say something, and this is not to cast any doubt upon anything that you said. We just need to say, for the record, allegedly, on some of the points that Ms. Jhingory has made. These, again, are based on her experiences, and we appreciate her sharing her story, because everybody has a story, and this is her insight, and we just want to be on the record for that. Not challenging anything that you said, but just making sure we are we're covering things. But I want to say thank you to what you just said about the Black label. I have been saying for a long time that the whole spiel about us being this highly affluent, educated, African American majority county has become the best PR campaign since P.T. Barnum. And what I also point to is nobody's calling us as the subject matter experts on Blackness. Nobody is coming here to do their studies on all of the HU graduates and what are their accomplishments. Nobody is saying to anybody, let's come to Prince George's County and talk about reparations. I mean, it's like we got all the buzz when President Obama was running. He came in and out a couple of times. When he was president, he was here a few times. We see Wes Moore here from time to time. It's like we are props. And I also want to make the point of adding that not only do white folk probably resent all of the conversation about us being so much this, that, and the other, because we were a farming agricultural county. And so we're not home of the Harvard graduates of white America. That's over in Northern Virginia and in Montgomery County. And so if I were a moderately educated white person in the 1970s and 80s, and people started bragging about being Black and educated, and I had land, which means I have money, which means I have power, I'm going to start using that to my advantage, which then we got term limits and trim. And so and then the last point I want to add to what you said is when I go to Tyson's and Rio up in Germantown, what I see is also a very highly populated international community that we don't have in Prince George's County either.
I actually have a question for you, but I appreciate that observation. I think that with what you just said, you see an international community. People, when they hear the word diversity, they believe that diversity only applies to ethnicity, and diversity applies to income levels. Diversity applies to the way people think as well. Diversity applies to the way people deal with conflict. And I don't think that Prince George's has that kind of rationale. But my question to you, something you just said, historically, Prince George's County was a farming community. And as you all know, and you may know Prince George's County more historically than me, Larry Hogan is from Prince George's County. Yes. His father was the former county executive. And I was told that there was a Lord and Taylor in Prince George's County. So, and I'm just asking, and you said Prince George's County wasn't the Harvard and Yale's. What was the white makeup? What was the Larry Hogan makeup? Let me just ask one more time. What was the Prince George's County of Larry Hogan's childhood and teenage years? Was it white trash? Was it farming?
No. I wouldn't say that it was. They were agriculturally successful. People were agriculturally successful. We can talk about the Mike Millers of the world, right? And there are other big farming families at Prince George's County. So they had revenue, they had income, they had land, so they had access, right? So Larry Hogan, Steny Hoyer, Mike Miller, they went to University of Maryland. So you had a lot of people going to University of Maryland, which of course was an agriculturally founded institution that began to grow, I would say probably in the 30s, 40s, to add more studies opportunities. But I've never seen Prince George's County as this intellectually profound community. That's not to say that there aren't people who have those degrees, but I just did not ever see that. I don't see that as being comparable to what you see in other parts of the DMV.
Yeah, well, we're known for basketball, not intellect.
I do think that, and it may be a minority population, there are, DC is the place to be. DC is, whether it comes to big time jobs or low-level jobs. DC has one of the highest minimum wages in the country, and DC just has great opportunities, whether it's government contracting, or private sector. And there are a lot of Black professionals from around the world wanting to come to the area. They are not down with the tight, small row homes in Washington, DC. And they're looking to Prince George's County, and they have gone to some of the, and we don't just have to say the Harvard and Yales, they've gone to the Morehouses, they've gone to the Spelmans and the Xaviers, but they aren't, there's not a fire in their belly to run for Prince George's County leadership, because I believe that they may be turned off the same way some of the greater world, economic investment world, is turned off by Prince George's County. And the other thing I was going to say, versus, just keep hammering Prince George's County has the wrong leadership, wrong leadership. I do think that when it comes to the constituency or the residents, I'm such a former political employee, but when it comes to the residents and voters of Prince George's County, they do give off the behavior. And Sherman, let me know if I'm saying any language that's not allowed, but they do give off the behavior of a hoe that doesn't want to be saved. Prince George's County, you had this platform. You probably had this platform for over a year or 2 years, or I've been on my platform, and we give clear and tangible examples of
You say this all the
corruption
time.
in Prince George's County. We give, as they say, receipts. We could do a screenshot, we can do a video. And let me speak freely of Angela basically giving county contracts only to people that gave her campaign a whole bunch of money. Let me say their name: Willie Good, the convicted felon Willie Good, and Kurt Bates. She paid them back with your taxpayer money. Or Angela appointing people to the police board that have criminal records, no high school diploma. Hey, mom, I'm talking about my mom. And so on. Or, Aisha hiring a convicted felon, Leslie Johnson, to work in her office. I mean, and I'm sure there are plenty of very tangible, receipt-driven examples of corruption. You post it, people post in the comments, they give their thoughts and perspectives, but are they contacting the FBI? Are they asking for a petition against it? Are they going to these debates, raising hell? After you and I talk here, or they leave a comment, they're not doing anything. And I just say it's like a hoe that doesn't want to be saved. The treatment center is right there to get better, but they don't access it and do it.
Yeah. And can you, how do legacy relationships such as fraternity ties, church alliances, and family networks still shape who gets access, opportunity, and protection here in the county? Are you familiar with a lot of that? Because I know you briefly spoke on unions, but what about the others?
And I promise you that I would only speak on the things that I'm clearly familiar with. I'm only the labor union ties and the labor union money I'm most familiar with. I do know that Angela was dead set on making her campaign Delta Sigma Theta PG County government chapter, but that's all I know regarding that. And one more thing I wanted to say, I understand any views reflected by me or said by me, I'm solely responsible for. If anyone wants to impede any litigation or file anything, they need to file it directly towards me. And any views expressed are not that of Citizens for Accountability and Governance, or Levon Reedy Thomas, or Sherman Hardy.
Thank you
Oh,
for
bless
holding
your
us
heart.
harmless.
Thank you. I do want to say something, Caroline, that you mentioned about the educated folk of Prince George's County. We definitely live in a garage community where people pull up, go into their garages, and go into their homes. There are areas of this county that have some of the lowest percentages of voter participation, where people would be shocked because they are the people who have the big houses and the education and the income and all of those things. But you're right, they are not engaged for whatever reason. I mean, I've been doing this for 30 years, and I've never felt like I could just pack up and go. At this point, I've never ever felt that way.
I unfortunately think that that small sector of people that we're talking about that are integrating Prince George's County, that went to the Moore houses and they went to Georgetown after that, and they're for the big houses. They come home from their job, they go to their garage, they may do their evening power walk, they may go get some chicken from Sardi's in the evening for their family, and so on. And again, we're speaking freely here. I think that they find Prince George's County politics as nigga shit. There are other Black people that see it as nigga shit. It's not attractive to them. And my stepdad, he used to say something, you know, they're Black people and then they're niggas. And a lot of those people, they may not say it, some of them may say it, but their thinking is that's that nigga shit. As long as I got my house, my mortgage is being paid on time, I got my Tesla or Maserati or Range Rover that they have out there, I can go to Wegmans and go to Cava and Costco as I need. I'm not getting involved with that PG County nigga shit. And it's very unfortunate. And Sherman, one more thing I wanted to clear up. I just took some notes. Another big problem that as we talk about the voters in Prince George's County, you all, let me be clear on what Aisha's role is first. Aisha's former role was the state's attorney for Prince George's County. That means Aisha was the criminal prosecutor for Prince George's County. That's what that term means. And people were saying to me, she went to law school, she's a lawyer. Aisha has no experience. You all elected her, Prince George's County elected her with no experience as a criminal prosecutor. She had never prosecuted a criminal case. And that's just like saying allowing a person just to become a heart surgeon when they've never trained in cardiology. They trained in, I don't know, orthopedics. So I just wanted to make that clear when I was saying Aisha had no experience to be elected as a criminal prosecutor because she never litigated any cases. She did some real estate advisory, and you all elected her as criminal prosecutor. And now you're wondering why Prince George's County has the highest rate of domestic violence in the state of Maryland, and crime is fucked up.
Yeah,
You
that was
hired the wrong
definitely a
person.
huge topic recently. I don't know who that fell under with the person who was Levon, I think you have more information about it, where the person got out of jail or custody and killed this woman.
You talk about the youth judge.
Was it the youth judge that did it? I know there was recently
Oh,
somebody
you're
who was
talking
released.
about the recent situation where the person was on home arrest and he had been charged for strangulation. I
There was
don't
a
know
big thing with
I don't know the
former
timeline of his previous charge, but for some reason they released him with a home monitoring system, and within days he's been accused of killing the woman. And Miss Braveboy did a press conference where she kind of called out the judge's decision and said she'd have to look into it. Because I haven't had the opportunity to look at the timeline. I don't know when that case was originally heard,
right,
and how long he had been in. But it had to have been at least before she was sworn in as county executive. And I don't know what the process is for reviewing case decisions or prepping for cases in the office of the state's attorney, but I know that when we were in office and domestic violence kind of became a national conversation with a lot of funding available, we implemented a lot of initiatives around domestic violence. And one of the conversations was getting judges to not be lenient on these restraining order requests, reinforcing the restraining orders, and listening to victims when they came in. And we've had several cases now. I think I just saw something today or yesterday where another young woman was killed. And so, and I don't know if that was here or where, because you know the news feed on your phone is always jumping. But yeah, that there are a lot of questions about situations.
Yeah.
Sure, and that pivot is very unfortunate. And you all know the most historic case of domestic violence in Prince George's County is Yvette Cade with Judge, Italian name, I can't remember it as well. And and I was just going to say that pivots into another conversation. No one in Prince George's County looks at, questions the appointment of the judges that happen in Prince George's County. Now, I will speak to that. That is absolutely, especially when it comes to Black Girl Magic, Black Girl this, the sorority hookups in Prince George's County. Absolutely, the appointment of judges is related to sororities and so on. And I mean, you all have judges in the Prince George's County Circuit Court. They graduated from unaccredited law schools. Judge
What?
Carrington graduated from probably and Westmore appointed him, his boy, from the lowest ranked law school, Thomas Cooley, when it was unaccredited. And he's at the damn near the highest court in Prince George's County. And again, it goes back to what I said. The more, and I'm trying to say two things at once. The more incompetent and unqualified a person is, the more likely they are to bend to corruption. A judge, a lawyer that graduated, and he never had any clerkships, ever worked for any judges. He clerked, but he's been appointed to a judge. They're not going to get the salary. I think his salary is $210,000. No law firm is going to pick him up anywhere in this area and make that amount of money. So when it comes to, I need you to do a favor, I need you to rule this way on that case, I need you to do that, you're probably going to do it to keep that $210,000 salary, especially when you're a husband and father.
Hmm.
And
So
one more
in your
thing that I
opinion,
wanted to add. This
Mhm.
is on the DC side. I'm sorry. I know you guys have heard that the homicides in DC are off the fucking chain, but most of the judges, these people that committed homicide in DC, they are not first day at the rodeo offenders. Most of these people were re-released into the community by judges that were appointed by Biden and Obama. Just wanted to say that.
Hmm.
And as you know, judges in Washington, DC are appointed by the president.
Mm-hmm.
And then they go
And
through Senate approval.
Mhm. And you have a strong voice online. What do you want people who are just waking up to understand about the way power really works here in the county?
I want them to understand that they're powerful. That after they hear these conversations, after they read your post, after they leave a paragraph comment on their soapbox, what are you going to do after that? That you are powerful, that these people are funded by the money that they take from you every April 15th when you go do what you do. You're powerful. That's what I want people to understand. When people are giving you tangible evidence of corruption that is going on, what are you going to do other than complain? The power and corruption in Prince George's County is now part of Prince George's County's DNA in
But
terms
people
of
feel as though at least they're not stuffing, checks down abroad. They okay. Is
they're just
that
not
this
getting
that some?
caught. They're not just getting caught. They're not still not just getting caught. They're just not getting caught. I mean, in Washington, D.C., we had our Ward 8 council member. He stuffed money in the car. Trayvon White. Is it White? What's his last name?
Trayon,
Trayon,
Trayon White.
Trayon White.
Trayon. I mean, he stuffed it in his suit jacket. It's about
Hmm.
whether or not you get caught and who you pissed off and who's going to expose you. Oh, Lord and behold, they're still doing it. I mean, we need to do a separate series about what have I seen in my parents' house. Checks being written, cash being given. They still do it. It's just enough people that haven't pissed people off to get caught.
That's what I always say. I would say, I'm just waiting for the right person to get treated the wrong way, and it's all over with. That's usually how somebody goes down. Um, you decide you don't want to go along for the get along anymore, or you get caught up in a need for a favor that's told no, and then next thing you know, they're turning coattails.
But I want to say two things here. Even if people did get caught, do things get better after Jack? Did things get better after that judge with Yvette Cade? Did anything it was a lot of performative stuff? Are the judges still assholes? Absolutely. And let me say that affirmatively. Prince George's County, Maryland judges are assholes. After Yvette Cade, they continue to be assholes. After the Jack Johnson incident, Prince George's County still went into an economic shithole. So I don't know if it's possible. I don't know the legal side of this, but I believe that Prince George's County at some point needs to go under some type of federal receivership, like
Woo!
Washington, D.C. did. When Washington, D.C. went under federal receivership and then came out with economic development, That's how we saw the economic boom. We had to have white master come in with his federal government whip and take us over to get it together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
we've talked about that among ourselves with CAG about takeover. We definitely need something done about the school board. But I'm of the opinion that you cannot treat cancer with antiseptic and a Band-Aid. And so, you know.
You got to cut it out.
that federal government's going to come in like an antibiotic.
Yeah, I mean,
You know,
because we're
and
sitting on prime real estate. Prince George's County is the greatest throughway to every aspect of this state. And eventually, slowly but surely, there's going to need to be some different faces at the table. And I'm just, I prayerfully, I live to see it and enjoy it, because
a question to you all: what do you all think about Aisha's relationship with Mr. Trone, David Trone?
I worked on Mr. Trone's campaign for the Senate seat, and I know that she supported him. I've never been in a space with them other than a couple of public events, so I can't really speak to their relationship. But I think that on the surface, it was a political agreement.
Yes, a massa. Yes, a
You know,
massa agreement.
well, see, I don't see him that way. I'm not of the thing where just because somebody's white, I feel like he built his wealth like anybody else can, and I think he
Through total
served
wine.
well. Yeah, he served well in at the Capitol. I felt like he got a short. He was ill spoken of coming out of the box with the
He
campaign
definitely said
against
some
him.
wrong things at
No,
the
no,
right.
wait. When it all started, he was thrown rocks at before people even knew who he was. He was white,
That's
he was
true.
wealthy, and of course you don't want to vote for him because I'm Black, I'm a single mother. I know how you feel. So he took a long time before
Yeah.
he even attempted. And he said at my house when I had a meet and greet, someone disparaged Angela. And he
Mm-hmm.
said, what we're not going to do is talk about Miss Also Brooks. I'm here to talk about my platform. And he understood that he was a white guy running against a Black woman. And he did not
Mm-hmm.
shy away from that discussion. He was sensitive about it. However, he did make a misstep and said what he said, and that
And
kind of
open the
eased
doors.
up. And then the commercial came out, and people were mad because Ed Burrows said that
Training
it
wheels.
wasn't time for training wheels.
Mm-hmm.
So the fight became about her versus Ed Burrows, not her versus David Trone. And
Mm-hmm.
so they disparaged his record as though he had not served the people very well on Capitol Hill. And I just thought his record held up a whole lot better than hers. So I don't know what any conversation has been between him and Aisha, but he didn't do anything differently than any other politician I've seen do. You give me support, I'm going to give you support. He just happened to have money to do it where some of them don't.
And they are wearing him thin with that money too. But
And
really
can I
quick,
just jump in?
go ahead,
I want to
go
go
ahead.
on record to give David Trone just a little bit of credit. Just being in the political arena and on the fundraising scene in Washington, D.C., Mr. Trone has certainly, I care about where you put your money. He has certainly put his private money into UNCF repeatedly for events across Washington, D.C., and different other organizations that serve people that look like all of us. So I just wanted to make that clear. Could I give
Right.
you, or could we end, if we're about to end, could I end with my top 5 dream team for county exec? Anything you
Sure.
all can speak to it and say that's your cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs?
Sure.
Okay, I have a top 5. My number one, and some of them don't live in Prince George's County, so it's a dream team, but they're Maryland stakeholders. But number one is Monique Anderson. And the people I'm about to mention is because I think that you need to come to the table with a bit of respectability and already existing relationships. If you don't know Monique Anderson, she went to Sitwell Friends. I think her mom has a PhD in math. And if you guys ever read that book, Our Kind of People, she comes from that type of cloth without the attitude. I think she would be excellent. She brings great relationships. My number two, I like Eric Barron, who was your former U.S. attorney. I think that Glenn Ivy, the Harvard law educated Glenn Ivy, would have been excellent as a county exec instead of a congressman. I mean, he'll probably do good there as well. Um, Not a big fan of him, but I think Anthony Brown, your attorney general, who's also a Harvard law graduate, brings the great relationships, the network from Harvard. And who else would I put in that mix? What's his name that ran with Monique for governor? Is it Peter Francois?
Franchot.
Franchot. Mhm.
I know that I said it's a dream team. It's a dream list.
Mhm.
I think that if he came and got an apartment as the former controller, he was an excellent controller. I understand would be great. So that's my top five dream team wish list for Prince George's County,
Before
Maryland.
you go, thank you. And there was just one question in the chat. Are you familiar with what's going on right now with the them forcing the superintendent out and getting somebody the next day? You're not okay. So I want to ask that question again.
No,
And
wait, I wanted to address your dream team.
I
Yeah,
gave it
that's
up the
my
floor.
dream
Go
team.
ahead.
I think that your choices are very interesting based on what you just said about Aisha and Angela. All of them are very entrenched politicians who I'm waiting for Anthony Brown to throw the rocks at the people who are corrupt here in Prince George's County. I'm waiting for him to open up some investigations and
He
say and
loves
do
Aisha too
something.
much.
I'm just saying, I can't. I mean, he's okay with me, but Monique Anderson Walker, yeah, nah, not county executive. She's cool people, but not county executive.
Why not? Tell me why not.
I just don't find.
Because I definitely want to be knowledgeable and be able to share different
I don't
perspectives.
have any. I mean, I'm not prepared to give a briefing on why. I just think that when she left, I'm a person who believes that you stick with the seat that you have been given. And she left her District 8 seat, and we ended up with Edward Burrows. And that was definitely inside politics game. And I just feel like she waited, she worked for it, she should have stayed there. Eric Barron, I have issues with him. He too knows about corruption in Prince George's County, but he hasn't done anything. I mean, Citizens for Accountability and Governance, we've reached out to so many people. And even before I became involved again, I know that our founder, Tanya Wingfield, who couldn't be on tonight, has always done her due diligence to make the powers that be aware of things. I mean, we have situations now that we've reported up to the state and across all of these entities, and nobody does anything. Glenn Ivy, Glenn's a nice man. Hey, how are you? But Glenn has some issues as well.
What about? I was going to bring up the Keith Washington thing. Are
Yeah,
you
I was going
familiar
to
with
say
that,
Keith Washington.
Caroline?
No, remind me. As soon as you said the name, it sounded familiar. What happened with
That he
Keith
was a police
Washington?
officer who was convicted of killing uh,
The
someone from the furniture
furniture
store.
deliverers. He was
Yeah,
Jack's driver. The one that Jack
Oh,
said he didn't know who he was.
oh no, I'm not. I didn't know he. I heard about this, but I didn't know he was Jack's driver. Okay, no, I didn't.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and the
And,
prosecutor
and
on that was Glenn Ivy, and
Glenn.
he was
Mm-hmm.
accused of prosecuting Kevin for political
Keith.
reasons Keith, I'm sorry, for political reasons to gain traction and get his, the state's attorney, get knowledgeable
yeah,
about that process or people to understand who he was, whatever. So.
And also, I have a problem with people who jump around for opportunity. Glenn wanted to be county executive, but when Rashawn Baker ran, he didn't want to run against him. So he stayed, out of it. And then he decided he didn't want, I guess he couldn't run against Angela. So he went to Congress. And I just don't see how the positions are equitable in your interest and your commitment. So that's how many. I said Monique, I said Eric, I said Glenn. Peter Francho is a no. And who was the fourth?
Is he a no or a hell no?
He's just a no for me. I mean, I feel like he's part of the Old Boy Network, but I've heard he's not really part of the Old Boy Network, but he gives Old Boy. I don't know. I think he's a power broker. I think he knows a lot about everybody, as he was quoted in the newspaper regarding Angela. I know everybody's financial reports. And I was like, whoa.
Let me ask both of you, magic wand in hand, one person, who do you think would be, and if you're pleased with that, you should be it, different perspectives here. Who do your fantasy would be a county exec that could bring the economic investment to Prince George's County? No matter how whimsical, magic wand, who do you think that would be?
Me.
All right, now.
Y'all said Jesus? Y'all said Jesus?
Let's see. Go ahead, Lavon.
Well, like I said, I worked with Rashawn for 14 years. I did not support him for governor either time. I've publicly said why. He knows why. I supported him this last go round because I felt like he lifted us out of the doldrum, and he had a difficult time coming out of the corruption of the Johnson administration. He walked a fine tightrope. He wasn't perfect. I've been on record with things that I disagreed with about his administration. Some of the people he picked to work, I feel like the Bible says, he in the 23rd Psalm, he'll prepare a table before you in the presence of your enemies. That doesn't say you set the table and put your enemies at it and let them eat from your fine buffet. And so that was one of my big issues after working so hard to help him get into office. So I believed that Rashawn was the best person to follow Angela's administration, since he basically laid out the red carpet for her to win that seat, and yet nothing was really done. There was no progress, and people can say COVID, they can say whatever reason they have. He knows what he set out to do, and because we're term limited, he wasn't able to see some things through to fruition. And so I felt like it was a great opportunity for him to tie up some loose ends from his previous service. Other than that, I don't really have anybody on the bench. I think Derek Leon Davis is a great person with a lot of great insight and understanding of how to get things done. He was integral in moving District 6 out of what it had gone through as well, and worked well with Rashawn. But I don't see anybody.
Myself. And that's what I was going to say. I hate to be that way. And I don't want to pick, I rock with Baker, but I didn't want to pick him for this one because I wanted to pick somebody who has not been so entrenched in county politics. Honestly, I don't know of anyone right now who I believe would be a good fit, because I believe that a lot of our officials are limited, in their thinking.
Let me say this. I'm sorry, Sherman. I would, because you asked specifically about economic development, that was why I based my answers the way I did. I think there are other people who could fill the seat, but for different reasons. Go ahead, Sherman.
Yeah. For me, I'm hard pressed to find someone right now, and I know there's probably a few people out there who would do a good job, but I don't think they've made themselves seen yet, or we have not been able to truly identify those individuals based on the markers necessary to, at least for the milestones where I believe we need to be. Plan 2035 has not come to fruition, and we've not been working on it like we supposed to. And it's right around the corner. We should be working on what comes after 2035. And I just every other week it's a new survey that council members or different people coming out and saying, what would you like to see in this area or that area? And I feel like the community is tired. We've been surveyed out. By now you should know what we want. Everybody's like, oh, we're tired of Royal Farms and this and that, but they want a Buc-ee's. To me it's all the same. We definitely, for me, I want somebody who's going to bring an industry here. That's what I'm looking
Brings
for.
a what, Sherman?
Industry.
Right.
Yeah, I know we were moving towards the medical industry, the medical sector, and all those things that supported.
We built a new hospital, and the people still complaining.
No, but I mean, let's not. I mean, aside from the challenges of the hospital, the vision was to make that 202 Central Avenue crossroads the medical hub. I forget what they call it, life sciences or something like that. And so that's what the goal was. So we did have a vision, and now we have the health innovation corridor down at Southern Maryland Hospital. So I do believe that we could build an economy around health and sciences with the right impetus, with the right vision to connect the dots. I do think we could be a place of science and innovation.
And one wish I had for Prince George's County, that when that metro station was built for that Morgan Boulevard exit, where they built that station, I feel it just was not smart. I really wish that the exit for that station was built to come out of the grounds of Landover Mall. And now that empty land could have turned into, since the FBI is not coming, or if it was, it could have turned into a bunch of satellite offices for government agencies. And I don't know if you guys have seen over in Arlington, like not far from Reagan Airport, that's exactly what they did. The U.S. Department of Defense, I know because I used to work there, and Department of Homeland Security has a bunch of satellite offices, and that metro station shoots right up. So it gives convenience for people to get there. And Prince George's County could have made a lot of revenue off of making that professional office space. I really don't know of any professional office space other than Suitland. I don't think that did what they thought it was going to do, and bring in a government agency that anchored in a bunch of other economic investment. What agency is that out there at Suitland?
That's the Census Bureau and NOAA.
NOAA. And so NOAA moved from downtown Silver Spring out there?
I don't know if it moved, but they have a site
or something like
in
that. Yeah.
Suitland.
And did that area see a bunch of anchoring of other economic development? I know there's Red Lobster.
It was supposed to have been to buy Suitland, but I think a lot of the programs that were created to lift up a lot of these historically underserved communities was left to the wayside after the change of administrations.
Okay, well, let's just put a little history on it. So Suitland, Barbara Bukowski used to like to talk about Suitland and how she went after the Census Bureau because they wanted to put up wrought iron gates and fences around the property and not be a part of the community. And she liked to talk about how she, and I think it was Wayne Curry, went and stood and hung their hands across the fence and said, no, you're going to take this fence down. Suitland was met with some questionable ethical activity during the Johnson administration. There was a person who had a lot of property in Suitland, and my understanding, they were playing hardball on some things, and it was hard for the county to get progress in Suitland. Well, Sherman took over, and we had something called the Transforming Neighborhoods Initiative, and Suitland community was part of that. And so what that did was it had 6 points of reference that was based on data. One was third grade reading scores. One was income level, health status, and location to a metro station. And so that's why we now have the new apartments, senior residences. We have townhouses. There had been a elementary school built several years ago behind on that side of Suitland High School. And now we just had new Drew Freeman built, and Suitland High School is under reconstruction. And so we spent a lot of time looking at inventory of housing, abandoned businesses. So we put in some monies to get people assistance with house repair, home repair. We condemned some properties. So there's a plan. There was a plan in place. And now back to what Sherman said, nothing moved forward in that next administration, in the also Brooks administration. And so Suitland, I mean, the school construction is continuing, but the idea was to make Suitland more like a Silver Spring and connect Marlboro Pike, Silver Hill Road to Branch Avenue, Iverson Mall.
Okay. I was Suitland like a Silver Spring. It's just such an oxymoron for me to hear it.
Yeah, and then because you have the art school, the performing arts school, they have Creative Suitland there now, and so the theater to bring more attention to the Suitland theater. The Annabelle Ferguson Auditorium, I believe, was in partnership with Park and Planning, so the school had limited, or it was kind of red tape usage of it, if I recall correctly. So I believe the new auditorium will be fully operated by Suitland High School, and so it'll be more like, I guess, the comparison would be, maybe, I can't say for sure, but in my mind, I see something like the Bowie Performing Arts Center.
Yeah, that was definitely a big investment, because outside of that, and this was when I first moved here, and I started practicing real estate as well. There was a heavy push to buy Suitland. So they had the down payment programs as well to try to get people to, move into this area, because it was supposed to be up and coming, but the comment is still up, I guess.
It looks like an incomplete sentence. When you're out there, it looks like an incomplete sentence. The development looks like it stopped. You can see it.
Yeah.
He's laughing at me. He's like, this girl.
Yeah, the commercial development is still waiting. They're doing something though on, I think that's Suitland Road.
Funds for to transform that block. Before also Brooks left, I know that was like one of the last things that she was working on. Apparently, was getting the funding to revitalize the area.
And also let me just say this, because we did have a developer on, and so many times people talk about we don't have a Black developer, we don't do this. That project was led by a Black developer, yeah, he was a partner in the project. So we do have things that are successfully done in Prince George's County by non-white people.
Oh, absolutely. And you're next door to DC, where DC is a lot of projects people don't know are Black developers as well. And to what you said, you absolutely do have success, but those changes in administration, do people build upon that success and the potential of that project?
Right.
Does it get completed? Does it get done? And it's unfortunate. And a lot of times things don't get completed because of that person's ego, or relationships, versus caring about the best interests of the people.
Right. Like Hampton Park. Hampton Park was handed over at the end of our administration, and it has had a couple of hiccups. Caroline, we didn't get to that in the developers conversation, Sherman, but Caroline was another one by the hospital. That's supposed to be a huge project with a green space, mixed use, and it's had two buyers, or a buyer, the original buyer, another buyer, and then my last understanding is that the land was split and sold to two two companies. And so now the original plan is over with.
Have Prince George's County residents communicated that they want green space, or is that what they're being told that they should have? I'm just curious.
They want it.
There's definitely an element that wants that, and believe that we need to definitely preserve some of the open and green space that we have. So, but
sometimes I hear green space, it becomes that buzzword. People are told that's what they're supposed to want: green space and dog parks. No, we want jobs. Buildings still have jobs.
Yeah, well, before we go, I just want to make this statement, and then I'm definitely going to let you, because we don't take up all of your time. I find it hard for the county to actually get the industry that I talk about, or the jobs that we talk about, because they look at markers, and the education rate is so high, and the unemployment rate is like less than the national average. So, in order to bring those companies in, we have to have the available resources and talents and stuff like that. And right now, it may possibly just be entry level jobs that we get, not necessarily the more advanced, because everybody's looking for a good government job, which I feel as though, we need to try to find something outside of that, as we see how that's been hindering us lately. But, what are your thoughts on that? Because we
Sure, if
have
I
to
can
have the
respond
talent.
to that.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. I think throughout history, or even in our neighbor Washington, D.C., I don't think that the lack of economic investment should be blamed on the lack of attractiveness related to the education levels, or any of the socioeconomic stats related to its people, because we've seen across the country, and we'll use the word gentrification, where economic investment has come to piss poor communities and took over, developed, invested, built their Starbucks, their dog parks, their gay this, their gay that, where the educational data and levels were much lower than Prince George's County. The crippling with Prince George's County is not having politicians and leadership that knows how to be economic chess players when it comes to being at the table, and also electing leadership that does not bring an existing network, net worth, or Rolodex of people that can bring that economic investment. I think that's where the problem is, because, and I'm a person, by the way, when it comes to gentrification, I do believe that gentrification can be a good thing when done right.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
we believe New York, DC, Philly, economic investment has come. The people were, I mean, crime-ridden communities look like they're in New Jack City, the Carter, and economic investment came because they had the right people at the table, and they also had people at the table that were willing to bend and say a little bit of, yes, massa, bring me your economic investment. And I don't think that Prince George's County has any of that combination, willing to bow down to white folks because it wants to be so pro-Black. And I think Aisha and all the council members just went to the ICSC conference in Vegas, which is where all the economic community is. I went every year. I didn't go this year because I'm here, but no one was checking for Prince George's County, Maryland. No one was wanting to have behind the scenes meeting about economic investment in Maryland. If any council member that attended or Aisha wants to prove me different, then prove me different. But no one was taking meetings with you all. So I definitely do not want to, whatever the educational attainment, income levels are of Prince George's County's people, I do not believe that that is the sole reason that the economic community may not find Prince George's County attractive. It is on the leadership in Prince George's County to make it look sexy to rich white people.
Woo, girl, you are speaking my language. I keep saying, and I'm not a person who believes that everything is gentrification either. I think that here in Prince George's County, what you just said is why I won't say when we do start seeing change that it's gentrification, because I feel like there's been some surrender and there's been some challenges to progress. If you start talking about moratorium when you first take office, the ink is barely dry on your whatever they sign, their certificate of office, and you're saying, I'm passing this bill, no building, this bill, no this bill. People are like, and you are, and who are you and where did you come from? I mean, I keep telling people, if you don't own any land, if you don't have trees to sell, if you don't, then really you're just talking. And I'm not a landowner. I don't have a business background, but I've been out and about, and I've been in spaces where I understand the full picture. And I believe that everybody has a role to play and everybody has something to contribute. And we cannot be bullies, because bully is nothing but a coward. And we get caught up in distraction and unnecessary battles over what? Because you got elevated to a position that you publicly admit you don't know anything about. But anyway, we could go all night.
Yeah, hopefully we
remember,
can get you back.
Gentrification is just changing dirty underwear. Instead of saying gentrification, just saying we're changing our dirty underwear. I heard someone say that. I'm like, that. So thank you so much for having me. Sure.
Thank you.
How long have you been in Maryland?
I moved here December 2012 when I started working for FEMA.
Okay.
And I've been in love ever since. I tell people I was in Virginia, and it was just like, but when I crossed over the bridge, and I saw the communities, I was like, this feels like home. I went into Ashton Heights, the tower on Suitland and Southern Avenue. I saw the police officers there. They were Black, and I saw my first police chase thereafter. But I still loved it, and I love the county. It's hard to get away from it.
I know we're going to go. Miss Thomas, are you originally from DC?
Yes, ma'am. I'm a second generation Washingtonian. I grew up in 24th and Benning Northeast, and moved to Capitol Heights when I was 14.
I grew up 522 Crittenden Street 0 until I went to college. And I'm just thinking about what Sherman said. It felt like home seeing the Black police chief, Black police officers. So when you and I grew up, I'm not that young, Mrs. Thomas, by the way. I just remember growing up in DC. I always say when I grew up in DC, it was a real life Zamunda or Wakanda, because I grew up, I feel like your block was the same way. On one side of me, I had a Morehouse, Georgetown educated lawyer, UPenn dentist. The other side of me, I had a postal man or a drug dealer. And we grew up in this economic diversity where we still, pre-crack epidemic, during the crack epidemic, we still saw some economic investment. So and I just don't understand, Prince George's County is the children of that. Like, you have left DC and moved to PG, and why can't that just be recycled? I don't know. That was just a thought.
Right. Well, it's funny that you say that, because I cry when I go to DC, because I feel like the city is losing its feel. The home, the way they renovate homes, and it's just too much. But
and paint them gray.
Yeah, but you're right. I had foster kids that lived in one house across the street. I had multi-generational across the street. I had GS, I guess probably 10s at that point down the street. Activists, my ANC person lived across the street, taught me everything. She didn't know she was teaching me. I was a little girl, but I watched her serve the community. And my mom worked in the summer camp program, supervising the youth staff. It was just different. And I always said that I would stay in Prince George's County and do my best to not have to, so that my children would have the option of living here when they became adults. I didn't want what happened to my parents, which is they were redlined out. They were both DC government employees and couldn't afford to buy a house that would accommodate 3 children. And that's how we ended up in Prince George's. And I always say to people, we can't get in the way of growth in Prince George's County, because what you came here for in 1975 is not what people want now. They may want it, but they're not at the place. We don't have anything for the folks starting out that's appealing to the bougie or the higher income children that we've raised, right?
Kids.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. And so in DC, a girl lived on Benning Road, and she went to Georgetown Prep. Like, her dad was high-paid cosmetic surgeon in California. Her mom was a DCPS school teacher. So, the diversity, like you were talking about, is so vast and so real. And I think we've just missed the boat. Yeah, we missed the boat in so many ways. I feel like people came to Prince George's County and felt like they arrived, and they became powerful and got positions. And some of them don't even know how to sit down at home and enjoy their golden years. They're still in the mix and the mess. But anyway, I'm done.
I enjoyed talking to you all so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, likewise.
And you all provided me with some enlightenment. So now when I go online being crazy, Sherman, I can speak a little bit more intelligently. I act a fool online.
All the best.
We thank you so much for bringing that your insight to our chat as well, and being a little more open and liberal with what you say, because sometimes we don't say the things outright, even though it's like burning, but you just let it all hang out. So
Joe Clark. Thank you. Bye, y'all.
All right, take
care.
Bye.
Right. All right, Tanya, Lavon, thank you for hanging in there with me. And we gonna get ready to close out. Did you have anything to say before we actually let loose?
Thank you. I don't know why y'all can't see me tonight, but I really enjoyed our guests tonight. I felt like it was different types of information. We're trying to, you all may not tell everybody in the CAG group what you want, but we know Sherman is out in these internet streets reading and talking to y'all, right? So I do cruise the comment sections, and we're trying to make sure that we present conversations that will draw your interest, but more importantly, we want to produce conversations that enhance your advocacy and your need for truth and justice and accountability, because we can't do it by ourselves, people. We need you all out here.
Said, it's one thing to receive the information. It's another thing to take that information and do something with it. And a lot of times it's not much that you have to do. It's just letting the officials know that you're aware of what's going on and you're watching. And that's all they need to know sometimes. And
Exactly.
a phone call or a quick email can go a long way.
Right. Show up at some of the events. They're hosting enough events that you should be able to make your way and introduce yourself to the person that you may or may not have voted for. Yeah. But
because we definitely post those things inside of our group page, because I try to make sure that whatever's going on, whether I agree with it or not, you know about it.
Right, exactly. So I appreciate the time, Sherman, and much love to everybody.
Yeah, sorry for the technical difficulties, but it was definitely worth it. And for those who stayed with us this long, we appreciate you. For those who joined later, and make sure you go back and watch, because we had a conversation with a land use attorney who talked about development in our county. And stay tuned for more, because we're going to try to bring you all the best shows and episodes coming up based upon what your needs and desires are. So take care, our accountability buddies. We appreciate you, and